and welcome back to McMorris Prosthetic Services. Today I want to talk about setting realistic expectations and how important that is when it comes to learning how to use a prosthetic, or just, those initial phases of being an amputee, fresh out of the hospital. Like I've talked about in other videos, I remember, leaving the hospital, nobody talked to me about getting a prosthetic or meeting with a prosthetist. And then, I'm doing my own research into like devices that exist and everything else. And then I go to physical therapy expecting them to have like a leg for me to try on. Like I legitimately was thinking about it like buying a car. Like I'm going to go to PT, I'll test drive a couple legs, and then I'll decide the one that I want. And, I went to physical therapy, and like I've talked about, my prosthetist was like, you need to meet my physical therapist was like, you need to meet with a prosthetist. And I remember being like, my joke of what's a prostitute? and then going through the process and losing like maybe a month-ish, a few weeks of my recovery time because I didn't have that education. But then also, then I went back and got fitted and did that whole process, and then went to PT and started working. And really like getting fitted and everything the first time, I was like, okay, so what are the things we're going to be looking at? What do I need to know? And it's more so like, here's your leg, take it. And that, it makes sense because like for me as a new amputee, any of us as a new amputee, how do we know the things that we need, right? Like back then I didn't understand gait. I didn't understand the things that my body was doing overcompensate. I didn't understand what I needed out of my daily device to accomplish the goals that I want to accomplish. And so the prosthetist, selects those devices for you to help you, progress on. And then some amputees, I feel like, get to a point where maybe, oh, I like this foot, I want to try it, or I want to try this knee, or I want to try this socket, and they get a little bit more agency for themselves. But really, I think that it's important for all of us to understand that we all have that agency from the jump. And so that's a lot of why like I do reviews on here and everything else is I want clinicians, like if there's CPOs out there looking at these videos and stuff, I want them to like get some value from it for sure. And see like, oh, I haven't fit this knee before. Let's see what this knee is about. That's great. But really who it's for is for us. Like I want users to have a better understanding of the devices that they're wearing, so that like, if you're a Quattro wearer, you can adapt those modes so that they get exactly right. And it's called golf mode, but I use it for bowling and I use it for these 4 other things. And if I just having that understanding of what we're wearing really goes a long way and helps us decide, okay, like now I choose the devices that I wear, obviously, and it's very nice to be able to say, okay, I like these 3 things, I don't like these 2 things, but are those the end of the world to me? And really get devices that suit my needs, because I have that knowledge base understanding of like what these things are trying to accomplish. And so really that is the goal of like reviewing devices and things like that, is to give amputees like myself a better understanding of the things that they're wearing. Because I think if we have that better understanding, then we have more of a say when we're in the clinician's office and say, well, yeah, I like this foot, but like, what about these 2 other ones that I've seen that are similar? And I think that they would help me in these different ways. And that could be, super beneficial. In the clinics that I've worked in, it is beneficial when the patient has some of that knowledge and can come in and be like, hey, I saw this leg, I like it for these 2 things. And I could say, cool, okay, if I know those 2 things are what you're looking for, now I can help you narrow down, is this one the right one, or let's try these 3 others and figure it out. So anyways, back to setting realistic expectations. In the beginning, I didn't have that knowledge base, and I didn't have realistic expectations. Like I've talked about in other videos, I was like Googling, legs prosthetics and clicking on Google Images and seeing things with Nike logos on them and stuff, and was like, awesome, I'm going to get a Nike leg. Like, how many times has somebody come up to you, if you're an amputee watching this, and said, aren't you glad that it happened now because of where technology is today compared to 20 years ago? And it's like, well, prosthetic technology is the same as it was 20 years ago. And there's some things that are getting better, but it hasn't really improved that much. And even still, as amazing as it is, it's nothing like our regular leg. And I think for me and a lot of new amputees that I talk to, that is hard to adjust to because, like I've talked about, how we are used in pop culture for inspiration, which is not negative, but I think that it can be framed negative because someone has been healthy their whole life, right? Let's put us in a scenario. Let's just put myself in my scenario, right? I was healthy until I was 21. I was an active guy doing all these things. And then I end up losing my leg. And I'm thinking in my hospital bed, like, technology is amazing. It's incredible and it's going to help me so much. And it is, and it does. But I did not understand how much it would take from me to use this, right? How much energy it takes, how much I just have to think about things, how much extra effort I have to put into different things. Like I didn't know that. And so then when I got my leg and I started walking pretty well and was learning how to use it, which PT and everything is obviously I've gone into that and probably will go into it more. But all of that is super important. But I didn't realize like, oh man, this isn't going to restore me, right? My prosthetic is not going to make me whole again. I can be whole again, but it's going to take a lot of work. And so that was really kind of a hard adjustment because I was expecting to go to the prosthetist and them to give me like 3 legs. Here's your walking leg, here's your running leg, here's your snowboard leg. Have at it, dude. And I'd run out of there. And it just doesn't go that way. If you see somebody in a commercial that's running on a running blade, that is incredibly hard to just get the coordination of timing down. That's why I don't like running very much because yeah, it's a lot of effort, but like just the timing and coordination of things is very rhythmic and it takes a lot of practice. And like me snowboarding, that has taken me years and years to like feel confident at and to a level where I can take care of myself. You know what I mean? And so, but in the beginning, I was like, yeah, it's amazing. I'm going to have the coolest knees. And I do. Like, well, there are cool things. I'm not trying to downplay that. But I think that a lot of new amputees, I've met a few amputees back in the day that, like I wore a plie 3 for 10 years. And so if you are knowledgeable on a plie 3, like one of the Proteer guys calls it the Honda Civic of knees because it's like very basic, it's reliable, trustworthy, but it doesn't have any bells and whistles, and it's not really doing a ton for you in a lot of ways. It's a good knee. I'm not trying. I'll probably review it at some point. But I had a patient that they would come to our office and they were on a Genium, which back then especially Genium was top of the line. And they would say to me like, I want your leg because I want to walk like you. And for me, that was very, very difficult to hear. My collar, fix my collar here. That was very difficult to hear because they had a knee that was 70 grand more than mine and had like 1,000 more features and benefits and ways that it could help and improve the quality of life and day-to-day activities of that person. But they saw how I would walk, but they didn't see the effort that I put in to get there, right? They didn't see the effort that it took me to walk with that knee even. Like, well, now, since I switched to my X3, it's like that plie, I love that thing because it saved me, it kept me going for 10 years. But it's like when I switched to another knee as a daily driver, it's like, man, that thing was like a weight trainer compared to, some newer technology and newer things that are out there. But this person just didn't have that knowledge base of this is this device, this is this device, this is this device. And the person behind the device is really what makes the difference. And that was really hard for me in the beginning. It was hard for that guy because, like I said, he would come in and watch me walk and he'd be like, I want your leg. How come you guys can't make me walk like that? And he'd be like, dude, I'll trade you straight up if you want. But really the difference here is not the leg. The difference is the amount of time and attention that I put into physical therapy and occupational therapy compared to the time and attention that person was putting into physical therapy and occupational therapy. And some of that was because of their knowledge base. They weren't expecting to have to do a lot of physical therapy. They were expecting to get a leg that was going to make them whole again. And no leg is going to do that. No prosthetic is going to do that. And it's like kind of unfortunate to say that. Things are getting better, but it isn't. That is just the reality. And when I meet new amputees, I don't sugarcoat things. Like this is not the end of the world. There are a lot of things worse than losing your limb. That doesn't mean that it's easy, and that doesn't mean that it isn't incredibly hard. And I have hard physical days, I have hard emotional days, and all of those things are true all at once, right? But you have to understand that you will play an active part in it. You play an active part in being part of the fitting process and communicating with your clinicians. You play an active part in your PT and how well your process, at the end of the day, it's you that has to use it. And so if you're committed to learning how to use it and committed to learning about it and how to use it, optimally and how it can benefit you the most, and then you apply yourself physically to doing those things and to getting the rest of your body healthy enough to do those things and strong enough to do everything you want to do, you can do it. I have seen the only barriers for amputees are really the ones that we put on ourselves. I've met people that I never ever thought would be able to walk, and I know one guy, he's running a half marathon this weekend. And I know other people that it's like, man, you've got a pretty good situation, but you've kind of chosen to feel sorry for yourself. And like I've talked about in other videos, we all have to go through some sort of grief, and that looks different for everyone. But having realistic expectations of what your prosthetic can and will do for you is very important. And so, again, that is like a lot of the goal behind like my reviews on this channel and everything is yeah, again, I want to give education to the field, to the industry, but also it's really for users. And I want to have, even as I get further into it and go into knees more, like I would love to do a full breakdown of setups, and then a full breakdown of like, this is exactly how I set things up, this is how you could change settings in a quattro so you can adapt your golf mode to do this thing. And I want to help other amputees learn as much as I have learned, because I really have been so fortunate to work all of the places that I've been able to work over the last decade and learn as much as I have over the last 10 years. And so I want to help educate about that. But first and foremost, it comes from having realistic expectations. And the main thing off that is that, yeah, your prosthetic is just not going to make you whole again, but you can make yourself whole again. But you have to understand all that it takes and the pitfalls that come with it. If you have questions and are, a little bit concerned of like, what is realistic? Am I thinking about this the wrong way? How should I be, thinking about going into my first fitting? Put them in the comments. I'll get back to you. I'd love to talk to you about what to expect and help out however I can. Other than that, we'll see you next time.